Over the weekend, Canada experienced its worst mass shooting in Canadian history. Right now, the death toll, as I'm going to show you from this tweet from Brett Ruskin at CBC, RCMP update the Nova Scotia shooting death toll to 23 victims. 23. This is unheard of in Canada. The only other mass shooting that even comes close to this is when 15 people, including the shooter, were killed in Montreal in the 80s. Apart from that, this doesn't happen. These are completely random events. And it's because we have actual strict gun laws, as I'm going to share in a minute. And Canada's about to do more in terms of that. First, I do want to give a little more detail here from what was shared. Nova Scotia RCMP are currently at 16 specific locations in the communities of Portapique, Wentworth, Debert, and others to gather evidence and learn more about what occurred at each location. We believe there to be 23 victims, including a 17-year-old. All other victims are adults, both men and women. Among the victims is Constable Heidi Stevenson, a 23-year veteran of the RCMP. So, I almost didn't cover this story because there's nothing to really, honestly, there's very little to take from this. It is just a completely depressing, tragic story. But because my audience is largely American, I think there are lessons here for Americans. Because I know there are some Americans out there, those pro-gun Americans, looking at this story and thinking, oh, look at that. Canada has stricter gun laws, and even there they can't prevent these mass shootings. The point with gun laws isn't that you prevent every single random tragedy from happening. It's that you have a lot less of them. So, for example, seatbelts in cars. A seatbelt isn't in a car because it's going to prevent every single car accident death. It's in there because it's going to limit the ability for people to die in a car accident. That's what gun laws do. You're never going to be able to prevent every single tragedy, but you can definitely cut down on the amount of death and destruction that happen because of guns. Let me show you exactly what Canada has done, at least up to this point, in terms of gun laws from Al Jazeera here. It is illegal to possess an unregistered handgun or any kind of rapid-fire weapon in Canada. Purchasing a weapon requires training, a personal risk assessment, 2 references, spousal notification, and criminal record checks. And we're going to begin, or I should say the Liberal government, the Trudeau government's going to begin to do more on that. So on top of a ban on assault rifles, Bill Blair, who's the public safety minister, said the federal government is working on a number of other significant steps as part of its efforts to strengthen gun control, including new legislation that will tighten gun storage rules to prevent a diversion of firearms into the hands of people who would commit crimes, reduce the smuggling of firearms across the border, and introduce what are sometimes referred to as red flag laws to ensure individuals who represent a significant risk to themselves and others don't have access to firearms. So Canada is doing more on this front. But again, you can't prevent everything. These laws are put into place because they absolutely have cut down on the amount of mass shootings that Canada has experienced. So as I said, events like this are incredibly rare. But they still happen because you can't stop everything. So this was, there's still details coming in about who the shooter was. These are I don't want to mention his name. I don't want to show his face. There's no need to really discuss the shooter, but there is, it is important to understand who these people are that commit these crimes and what may have led to this. Now, I'm just going to mention one last thing here, and for whatever reason, people get touchy about this, and they shouldn't. Public health, mental health is an issue. It's an issue that needs to be focused on when it comes to cases like this. Maybe people are touchy in the U.S. about this because you don't have proper gun laws, so the idea of focusing on mental health over gun laws is the problem. But here, mental health generally is something that needs to be centered. Now, we are getting better and better at that as a society, not just in Canada, but worldwide. We are beginning to be a little more open with mental health issues. I've dealt with mental health issues. I mean, most people have dealt with some kind of mental health issue, whether it's, even depression or anxiety. But it's important that we center mental health when it comes to issues like this. Because when you have gun laws, like we do, and they do work, as you've seen, events like this are rare, it is still important to understand what leads people to be in the mindset that may lead them down a path like this. So I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. I think it is important to discuss mental health when it comes to shootings. But again, this is just a completely random tragedy. And the one takeaway here, at least for Americans, is that look at how rare this is. This is our deadliest mass shooting in Canadian history. Nothing even close like this has happened before or has happened since the 80s. So gun laws do work.